Hi everyone, welcome back to the third video in trig identities or simplifying trig expressions. So in this one, we're introducing tangent, a little different than the last two in that the tangent is going to mix things up a little bit. If you recall in the first video, we defined tangent in terms of trig functions, and we said that anytime I see tangent of some value, we'll call this value theta, I can rewrite it as sine of that value over cosine of that value. That's our definition of tangent in terms of trig functions instead of in terms of right triangles. And we could argue it's right triangles, but we'll just look at it in terms of trig functions. So because I see a tangent and another tangent, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to show that it's equivalent to something that doesn't deal with tangent, I know that I'm going to have to rewrite these two tangents in an equivalent form, which is what we're seeing right here. So let's go ahead and just start with that right away. I'm going to do a little bit to clean this left side up though, because something may happen here where we don't actually need as many common denominators as we would expect, but we'll see what happens. So when I have 1 over tangent theta, well, this is actually 1 divided by tangent theta. And then we'll just do a plus tangent theta here as well. And then we can put this in parentheses so it's clear that that is what is happening there. Well, when I start rewriting these tangent thetas as sine theta over cosine theta, we're going to see some things clean up here. So 1 divided by tangent theta is equivalent to sine theta over cosine theta. And then we add that to a sine theta over cosine theta. So we're rewriting tangent in an equivalent form, which is going to help us reduce or clean this up. I must have cloned these slides. All right. So when I have 1 divided by sine theta over cosine theta, well, that's the same thing as 1 multiplied by the reciprocal. And if I do 1 times the reciprocal, well, that's just going to produce the reciprocal. So this becomes cosine theta over sine theta. And it's actually 1 times this, but I'm not showing that step because 1 times anything is that anything. And now we add this to sine theta over cosine theta. So similar to the last problem now, we are adding 2 different expressions or 2 different ratios, and they do not have a common denominator. So we need to introduce that common denominator. So because there's nothing in common between sine theta and cosine theta, well, I want my denominator to be sine theta times cosine theta. So to do that, let's go ahead and change the color. We're going to multiply the left side by a cosine theta over cosine theta, which is just a complicated way of saying 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. And we're going to multiply the right side because we want the denominator to be cosine theta times sine theta. We'll multiply the right side by sine theta over sine theta. Again, anything divided by itself is 1. So we're just multiplying by a clever way of saying 1. So when we do this, we can go on our way. We'll have a cosine squared theta because cosine theta times cosine theta is cosine squared theta over a cosine theta sine theta. And then for the right side, we have a sine theta times sine theta. Well, sine theta times itself is sine squared theta. So sine squared theta over, again, similar common denominator, cosine theta, sine theta. So now that we have a common denominator, we can add these 2 together. So let's go ahead and do that. Cosine theta plus sine theta. Cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta. Whoops. So cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta, all over our common denominator of cosine theta times sine theta. So again, what we see now is a Pythagorean identity. Cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta is equivalent to 1. So we reduce that or rewrite it in an equivalent form, and we're left with 1 over cosine theta sine theta. And we can do no more simplification here. I believe this is what we were asked to set out to show that this is equivalent to. And in the end, there we have it, 1 over sine theta times cosine theta. So the only thing that's different here is I rewrote it as cosine theta times sine theta, but multiplication order doesn't matter. So this is equivalent to 1 over sine theta times cosine theta. And there we have it. So again, this is more of just taking these trig identities or this idea of trig and tying it more into algebra. Actually, it's topics that you've done before, but what makes it a little uncomfortable is we're dealing with these trig functions instead of just typical numbers. So go ahead, try the practice this week. Let me know what questions you have along the way. I hope you have a good week and these videos helped. We'll see you soon.